goodness, the goodness of my God is everywhere to me.
Welcome everyone, and now prepare yourself for Tuskegee's mayors within Thou Pride of the Swift-Growing South. It is a 5-part series of the African-American mayors of the historic city of Tuskegee, Alabama. Hello, I'm your host, E. Jagady Colbert, for the first of 5. And what a first it is. Today, we speak with Lucenia Dunn. Wait for it, Dr. Lucenia Dunn, first female mayor of the city of Tuskegee, Alabama. Greetings, Mayor Dunn. It's so good to see you today, and thank you for opening up your personal residence for us to do this interview.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I'm just very happy that you all are doing this historic piece on all of the African American mayors of the city of Tuskegee. Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, Mayor Dunn, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us where you were born and to whom you belong, parents.
Well, I'm actually Lucenia Laverne Williams Dunn, and Dunn is my married name. I am the first child of Lucius and Osceola Williams, and I was born in Georgia on my grandmother's farm, grandmother and grandfather's farm, and I was delivered by a midwife. And I say that because the first time I ever went to a hospital, I was 21 years old.
Wow.
And that was in Tuskegee at John Andrew Hospital.
Wow. Schooling is so very important to everyone across the globe and right here within the city of Tuskegee, Alabama. Tell us about your education process, starting with your elementary, your high school, and then your collegiate time. And in those times, maybe tell me 1 or 2 people who influenced you or you remember in that schooling process.
Okay, I'll be glad to do that. My very first school experience outside of my mother, who was a teacher, and I learned to read when I was 4 years old. And she taught me. My father worked in the juvenile home in New Orleans, Louisiana. He was head of that organization. And so my first experience in school was at McDonald number 6 in New Orleans.
Wow.
Well, my father got a job at Tuskegee Veterans Administration Hospital, and we moved to Tuskegee when I was 4. I started out in the first grade at Chambliss Children's House, which was the lab school of Tuskegee Institute. And I graduated from Chambliss Children's House and went on to Tuskegee Institute High School. And because I grew up on the campus of Tuskegee, I did not want to go to college there. So I ended up going to Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. You ask a very important question because we do not often talk about those people who influenced us in those lower grades. We had some fantastic teachers. I can tell you all of them that I went to. The first one was Mrs. Sprague. Mrs. Sprague taught us about team and recognizing the roles that each of us play because none of us are the same. So she, and this is very vivid in my mind, she came in one day and wrote on the blackboard, this is the theme for the science fair. And she had us to repeat it, and then she walked out the room. So the natural proclivities of the individuals in the class then became alive. I am an organizer. I've been organizing all my life. I didn't realize that until much later in my life, but I helped to organize that whole process. Those kids that were the science folk, Bobby Owens, William Winston, Spanky Robinson, some of those guys were very involved in science You know, they created stuff even at that young age. And we did very well at that science fair. Then there was Lula Cox, who was the one who taught us about being gentlemen and ladies, even at that age. And that was my second grade teacher. My third grade teacher was Ruth Flowers, and she tended to lean towards social science and history and that sort of thing. I can go on up the line, but I must say that Lionel Richie's mother was my fourth grade teacher, and that's when I learned to fight for myself.
Okay.
Well, you know,
You're a lover and a fighter.
there you go. And so Mrs. Flakes was my seventh grade teacher, and my eighth grade teacher was Mrs. Pitts. Our principal was Laura N. Jones. And Laura N. Jones insisted that we understood where we were and what we were about. So we learned about not only things that we read in the books, but we went up to Logan Hall to see various programs and various people that came to visit Tuskegee. For an example, I met the president. I met President Tubman of Africa, who came to visit during that time. So there were lots of people who were from foreign countries, and of course we were known to be a very strong educational system at that time.
That's correct.
And so they would say, Lucenia, would you get up and read? And of course I got up and read. What I didn't know was that was preparing me to do public speaking.
So you're saying that it leads me to ask this question in those early years. Can you tell me one of your favorite childhood memories?
Oh my goodness, how in the world can I figure that out? That's a hard question for me because it was so many wonderful memories. And I guess what I'd like to say about growing up in Greenwood, which was the original Greenwood. Of course, people think Tulsa, Oklahoma
That's correct.
was the original Greenwood, but that's not. It was Booker T. Washington's Greenwood. It was so safe. We didn't even have a police. We never saw a policeman. We knew there was a sheriff, but that sheriff was somewhere, you know, far away from us.
Doors were not locked like they are
we
today?
could go on vacation and stay 3 or 4 months and not even lock the door. As a matter of fact, I never even had a key to my house. Nobody had a key to their homes. You know, everybody was just part of it. And I think the other thing which a lot of black communities talk about, and that is the community that took care of all of its children, no matter whether they were your blood children or not. So it was very, very hard to get away with crazy stuff. But we did do some, you know, we did do some things. I remember the fact that the only rule during the summer when we were off from school, there was only one rule. And that rule was be home by the time your dad gets home from work.
Okay.
And
Good rule.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were so many children, and we all walked to school, and we all met up, and we all walked back home, and it was fun. You know, it was fun. It was safe. It was a time when we did have our little squabbles, but we didn't do any real heavy fighting or anything, and we knew who the juvenile delinquents were, and there were only 3 of them, and they weren't real juvenile delinquents.
Well, you know, Mayor, I share those sentiments about the education in the elementary part of your saying, what you're saying about the Chambliss Children's House. My father matriculated at Chambliss Children's House as well.
Yes. Okay.
And but this is one thing that I can say that you and I can share. We both matriculated at the one and the only Tuskegee Institute High School.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me something about those experiences.
Well, first of all, we had decided when we graduated from Chambliss Children's House that we were not going to have this separation of who went to Lewis Adams and who went to Washington Public and who went to the Catholic school.
Tuskegee
we were
Public
all,
also.
and Tuskegee. Well, it wasn't the Tuskegee Public at that time.
Okay.
It was only the ones that I named.
Yes.
And so we met everybody during that summer. We went to summer school, and we met all of the kids from there, and we got to know each other. That is one significant thing about Tuskegee Institute High School, and we still are together. We called ourselves the class of 1961, and we have been together since we graduated.
I worked with, on the media side a little bit, Paul Carney.
Yes.
And he's one of your classmates.
Paul Carney and Bobby Owens and Howard Nicholson, and I named those three because they started playing music when they were very, very young, and when they were in the 4th and 5th grades, they were playing with grown-up bands. Okay, so Jimmy Williams, who was the I think it was like the director of public events and stuff like that. I don't remember his exact title, so don't hold me to that. But he was the one who put together Music Under the Stars that we used to have at the VA hospital, and of course we had all kinds of dance teachers. And so we were always performing tap dance and all that other stuff, ballet, blah, blah, blah. So at any rate, Tuskegee Institute High School was another safe environment for us to try to figure out who we were and what we were about. And the thing that I remember probably most of all is the fact that we had a collaboration of kids who came and did stuff, and we all knew who did what, and we lifted each other up in terms of doing that. In my class, well, I was a majorette, and I became a majorette in the 9th grade, and that was very exciting because, of course, we had the big parades. And I'm sure you remember when we had the parades going down, Thanksgiving parades in Montgomery, and we had homecomings, and we were in the homecoming parade of Tuskegee Institute homecoming and all of that. So that was all very exciting. The thing that was so interesting about all of that is that we were so close to Tuskegee Tuskegee Institute, that we felt like we needed to beat them at whatever it was they were doing. So we were going to have our band was going to be as good or better than the band. The Baby Tigers. The Baby Tigers, that's right. The Baby Tigers were going to be equal to the Big Tigers.
To the Golden Tigers, that's right.
The big Golden Tigers.
That's correct.
So that was fun, in terms of whatever we were trying to imitate. So that's how we thought. And I didn't know that when you graduated from high school that you could get a job. I thought you needed to go on to college and graduate from college in order to get a job. Now, I don't know if that was the case for all of the young people that graduated from Tuskegee Institute High School, but we all knew that you could go to college.
Yes.
And whether you left and went to New York and New Jersey
or the service
or any of that, you knew that too, but that wasn't a primary process. The primary process was elementary school, high school, and on to college. And so being in a college town, we had the options of going to Tuskegee Institute.
Well, you said that, and all of those things were true about the TIHS. So now you are a young adult. I'm not going to Tuskegee because I've had enough of Tuskegee. I've lived through Tuskegee. I've been to Tuskegee, matriculated at Tuskegee.
Absolutely.
Slept and woke up in Tuskegee. So now you have traveled to the volunteer state. To what institution of higher learning?
Well, I got accepted at several different colleges and universities, and they were far away. And my mother was very clever. She said, well, if you go to those schools, you'll have to choose which holiday you can come home. And I'm like, I got to figure that out? No. So I decided to go to Fisk because my father went to Fisk as well. And so there were a number of Fiskites in this community, and they encouraged me to go to Fisk. And so I went to Fisk, and that's where I spent 4 years. That was the first time I ever had a white teacher.
Quite an experience.
Well, it was good because those were good, kind people, and they taught us, a lot. But that was just the first time. I'd never had a white teacher. In fact, I had a white teacher and I had my first Japanese teacher. So Fisk University was kind of a broad place.
Well, that nutshell approach about that young times, those young times in your life was very extraordinary, and a lot of people share those memories. Some are not here with us, but some are. And those who will be listening to this broadcast who were around that time frame can really identify with what she was saying. So now that we have a little bit more about you, we have a little knowledge about who you are and some of the things that you have done in those early years. Let's delve or go a little bit deeper into some of the issues for which you were involved. Tell us something about some of the things that you probably down through the years have spearheaded and or been involved with. For instance, is it TSEP or TISEP?
TISEP.
TISEP.
TISEP, Tuskegee Institute Community Program.
Yes.
Actually, it was Tuskegee Institute Community Education Program.
That's correct.
And it was under the tutelage and the direction of Dr. Bertrand Phillips. We called him Bert Phillips. He is still alive. He's 90-something years old. His mind is just as clear as it was during that time. He lives in Texas. Wow. This was my very first job.
Very first job?
Very first job that my mother got me. Because I had no intentions of working that summer. I was going to hang out with my friends and do all of the stuff that we always did, with Bobby and Anna and Scooty and all. I was back home, and it was just so great to be back home. But my mother said on the way back from my graduation, I don't get comfortable because you have an interview at Tuskegee. So that's what I did. I went on the campus and I registered for that job, and I got that job. But let me tell you, that was the best thing my mother could have done for me, because that changed the trajectory of my life.
Is that right?
I taught school in rural Lee County. What people may not realize, because Auburn has grown so big, is that there were dirt roads and there was deep segregation of educational institutions. So in the daytime, I taught 5th through the 12th grade English and social science. At night, I taught adults. And that's when I found out that so many of our people didn't know how to read and write. So I was teaching basic English in the evening, and it was basic. I'm talking about learning your alphabet and your pronunciation and the whole nine out. So what was so striking about that experience? One day, this man said, "Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. I wrote my name, and I don't have to make an X no more."
Amen.
And I was like, oh my God. Everybody was crying and hugging, and he was just so full. That changed my life. Absolutely changed my life.
And it seems like from those first beginnings, and thank you, Mom, for doing that, you started to receive within your soul that you can make a difference.
That is exactly expressed how I feel and how I felt at that time. Because my grandmother always said, for those of you who are privileged, it is your responsibility to reach back. I didn't pay much attention to that until that moment. And I understood with my grandmother, Estella Pearson, really, she just drummed that into her children and her grandchildren.
And so now, in that young time of your career in the workforce, you had put on some armor. Now you're going deeper out into the world, and it doesn't matter what types of fiery darts or criticisms are being hurled at you. You became a program director of the City for Educational Action at the University of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania.
Well, I graduated from Tuskegee Institute with a master's degree. And
what was that major in?
That was in administration.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I need to say that clearly. Student Personnel Administration is what I graduated in for that. And so the next step for me after graduating was going to get a job someplace. And I was very clear about that. So my girlfriend, Patty, and her husband at that time, and he still is her husband, by the way, Patty and George, were in Pittsburgh. And they said, why don't you come to Pittsburgh? So I said, okay. So I went to Pittsburgh, and I was the first black administrator for the Allegheny Community College, and I was in charge of workforce and I can't think of it. What is the name of it? Student personnel at Allegheny Community College.
Well, you had a early immersion into the world of different views, different ways of thinking,
absolutely.
different ways of living from different ethnic groups, but you were armed with the education and you kept right on going. And so I said that to say this. In this current world of critical race theory that is being tossed around now, you were involved in the improved curriculum to ensure the success of African American students, as well as the inclusion of African American history to make certain students learn about the contributions made by black folks.
Absolutely. One of my responsibilities at Allegheny Community College was to be the advisor to the Black Student Union. And the young people in Pittsburgh had not had the exposure that I had being in Tuskegee, learning about Booker T. Washington and Lewis Adams and all of those great people, George Washington Carver. So I thought it was that I start doing that, and Patty and I started a Saturday school called Ex Gar True Demar. Now I bet you don't know what Ex Gar True Demar means. Ex Malcolm X.
The whole world wants to hear this. So we'll be crystal clear.
All right, Ex Malcolm X.
Yes.
Ex Garvey.
Oh, yes.
Ex Marcus Garvey. Ex Gar True.
Continue.
Now, yes, you do. You know True. You know True.
Tell me.
She did what?
Tell me.
No, you need to know. You're a historian. What? At any rate, True Demar and Martin Luther King.
Yes.
So we just took pieces of those folk names and put that whole thing together, and we had those schools. And the kids learned not only about Black history, but they learned to speak Swahili. And so that's what we did with that. And that was a very exciting experience for me at that time.
Well,
and of course, we worked with the, I later worked with the University of Pittsburgh, and that's where I got involved with the public school system. And, we still did that same kind of thing. But that was when I learned, that's when I was helping teachers to learn to be teachers. And we put together a special teacher program that really helped teachers find out who they are and what it was. And that's when I realized that we do not spend enough time teaching teachers how to teach. Talking about methodology is fine, but if you do not have a process by which they can really get comfortable being in that classroom, understanding social and group dynamics, how that their subject matter and being comfortable with their subject matter, you have 6 weeks worth of training, of actual classroom training in most teacher training programs.
So what you're saying is the basic teacher's curriculum for the course that they're teaching is not enough. They have to know how to be comfortable with the students and to know the ins and outs of making their education process that much smoother.
That's exactly right. And the first thing, and the first rule is know who you are. When you understand who you are, then you can make that transition, because you can recognize that in your students, right? That everybody is an individual. and everybody has certain talents and all of that. But most importantly, I'm going to ask the question, would you go to a doctor who had had 6 weeks worth of training as a surgeon?
No, I would not.
No, you would not. So why are we subjecting our children to the same kind of thing? And we always laugh about professors having yellow notes, you know, because they've had the notes so long. Mm-hmm. Well, now that's an interesting thing, because maybe we ought to look at that, because you need to be fresh when you go into a classroom full of students who are new. So,
well, I'm going to say this to the WWW World Wide Web. Give Black History and or African American Study lecture series across the Southeast United States and other places. That's the first time I was not able to answer that one letter that you had. So you got me. But guess what? Now I have it, and you can't get it back.
There you
I
go.
have it.
See?
So now with that said, tell us something about your affiliation with the National Council of Negro Women Incorporated within Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia.
Well, the first thing is that when I got to Washington, D.C., I started working for the government, for the District of Columbia government, and that was a very exciting experience. It was under the mayorship of Marion Barry, and he was a very forward-looking and acting mayor. Because when I first got to Washington, at 6 o'clock downtown, it was closed up. Everybody was gone.
It's at evening time?
That's right.
After dinner?
After dinner, everybody was gone. And he brought...
In D.C.?
In D.C. Mm-hmm. He brought life to downtown District of Columbia government, District of Columbia. Mm-hmm. He also enabled black business people to have a piece of the action. So a number of black businesses fared very well under his leadership. The other thing is that he believed in customer service. And so that was what we needed to do, and we had to put together the process for helping everybody to understand you can't just pick up the phone and say hello. You got to be friendly, and you got to be knowledgeable, and you got to be helpful to those citizens in the community. That was the first time you saw government workers stay late. And they stayed late because it was important to them to do the right thing. And that was a lesson for me in terms of how you need to conduct the business of governing. So after my experience with the District of Columbia government, I then went to work for Dorothy Height at the National Council of Negro Women.
And you were able to converse with her on a normal basis sometimes?
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, she was another. I've been so blessed, because I have worked with smart people who were willing to teach me, and she was willing to teach me. She sent me all across this country, and that's when I learned to speak extemporaneously for real. And I was in charge of the Black Family Reunion, and we ended up having cumulatively 1 million people.
In D.C.?
No, this was across the country. We had
across the country.
We had one in California, one in Ohio, one in Georgia, and one in D.C. And put all those together. We had 400,000 people in D.C. to go to the Black Family Reunion.
Well, you have traveled all the way from New Orleans. You've gone to Pennsylvania, the nation's capital. Tell us about being a director at the Bethune Education Center, organizing the first office of public information for the Department of Consumer Affairs.
That was my D.C. experience. When I was hired by the District of Columbia government, I worked for the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. And they asked me to put together and organize the Public Information Office for that department. I was able to establish a way of communicating with the media, and developed a whole system for doing that, to be able to get information out to them in a way that it wasn't an adversarial process. And that worked very, very well. When I was with the National Council of Negro Women, I was the director of the Bethune Educational and Business Development Center. And that's when I went all across the country and did all the things. And part of that responsibility included the Black Family Reunion.
May I ask you a question? I've
Sure.
asked people who have traveled from many different places because I am employed at the School of employed at Tuskegee University. And for instance, we had a visiting professor from Harvard. And I asked him, have you ever heard of Tuskegee? And he said, yes. So I'm asking you, in all of these places, if they found out you were from Tuskegee or you matriculated at Tuskegee over there, did they know about Tuskegee?
You know, that is a very good question, because I don't think that those of us who grew up and or went to school in Tuskegee understand the magic of the name Tuskegee. When I was in Africa and I was in Nigeria, I spent a lot of time in Nigeria, and I was in the desert of Nigeria, northern Nigeria. And I never said I was from Washington, D.C. I don't care where I was. I always said I was from Tuskegee. And I'm telling you, to the man, letter, time, whatever, people always said, oh, Tuskegee.
Tuskegee.
So Tuskegee is a magical name, and it is a magical place.
So, guess where we are? We're like, this is a dance, and you and I are dancing. You're my partner. I would love, and I'm so happy that I am your partner.
Okay.
Let's do a very quick, rapid round. Well, you just have to say something very small. You don't have to say a lot.
All right.
It's called the rapid round.
Okay.
Here we go. If you could live any place in the entire world, where would it be?
Tuskegee.
If you could have coffee, whether it's at Starbucks or on your own stove or coffee maker, who would the historical person or figure be that you would like to have coffee with?
Oh my goodness, I would love to talk to Booker T. Washington and Lewis Adams. I would want both of them at my table, though I don't drink coffee, I drink tea.
Okay. What does your morning routine look like?
Oh, that's a terrible question to ask a woman. I want you to know that. Well, I think the first thing that I do after I wake up and, do all the things that you do when you wake up, I look at what my schedule is and who I need to talk to and what telephone calls I must make and organize my schedule for the day.
What is your favorite movie and why?
Oh my goodness.
Or one of your favorite movies and why?
I really, movies are an escape for me. They are not something that I indulge in terms of finding out what the plot is and how it relates to where we are now and all that kind of stuff. I just look at a movie. Sometimes I don't even remember the title of the movie that I'm looking at. So we can skip that question.
What is your astrological sign?
I'm Pisces Aries.
Born in the month of?
March 20th.
And it's a woman's prerogative to tell her age, and if you would like to do that, and I was amazed at the age that you told me, it's up to you. I would not divulge that unless you want to let us know what a Pisces age is.
I feel very, very blessed. I am 80 years old.
Hallelujah. And doesn't she look well?
Well, you said beautiful before.
What? Now here we go. Let me see. Mm-hmm. What's an insult that you receive that you're proud of? What is an insult that someone tried to insult you with, but you're proud of because they probably didn't know what they were saying?
That is really interesting. I don't think I've ever had an insult that I was proud of. I have had only one experience where somebody called me or implied that I was a nigger, And that was in China.
Tell us about one and or two of the most influential people that impacted you besides your earlier years.
Okay. I think that the people that most impacted me was a woman that was the dean of women at Tuskegee Institute, Maggie Matthews. Maggie Matthews really helped me to understand who I am and how I impact other people. And she did it in such a way that I have been comfortable with who Lucenia is even more. And she did it when I was in graduate school at Tuskegee Institute. She played a major role in helping me decide and move forward in how I think about things. The other one you've already talked about, and that was P.B. Phillips, Bertrand Phillips. And all of that is around the same time. Because, see, I did not realize until just this moment that the people who most influenced me at whatever time frame that was in the same time frame. And that was when I was in graduate school. You know, Tuskegee Institute played a major role in helping me to be who I am, even in terms of my involvement in the civil rights movement. And I learned about doing structure, organizational structure here through the civil rights movement. You know, things that people don't think about. How to structure your organization so that it does what it is that you want it to do. And I was the one who went and studied that and then was able to make that application. So I am involved with organizational development because of that experience.
We all are human beings, and we are within the land of the living. It matters not the ethnic group or your social status for which you belong. Here's a question I would like to ask you. If you won $10 million, what would you spend it on?
Oh my goodness, that's real easy.
Okay.
I would spend it on two things. I would spend it on developing my foundation. And
what is the name of that foundation?
My foundation is the Tuskegee Macon County Community Foundation. It's a 501c3 public charity organization. And I would use $5 million to hire young, really smart people that would be able to help us put together the process for the redevelopment of this town.
I know it's a rapid round, but tell us a little bit about that foundation so that everyone can know and they can probably more than likely contribute to that.
Okay. The TMCCF is the short term, so I don't have to keep saying Tuskegee Macon County Community Foundation. I started it when I was mayor of the city of Tuskegee because I wanted to develop a public-private partnership process. When my term was over and I came back to Washington and then came back to Tuskegee, the foundation was continuing, and they told me to get off the board and then take on the role of president CEO. My responsibility at that time was to help the foundation to grow and to develop the program that we were going to do. So the program for TMCCF is the elimination of health and economic disparities in rural communities.
And so now that you know that she does have a foundation, she's going to repeat how you can get in touch with her in this fantastic opportunity for not just you, but for her to assist others in those different ways that she will have them to be helped. Can you name that foundation once again?
The Tuskegee Macon County Community Foundation. And you can get in touch with us with tmccf.org, www.tmccf.org. That's our website. And if you want to email me, it is tmccf.inc, tmccf.inc @gmail.com.
You have it now. It's up to you. I know this is the rapid round. We only have a couple more in the rapid round, and here goes a few remaining. Name one or two of your biggest pet peeves.
I really have about 10 of those.
Okay.
But two of my pet peeves is ignorance about Black history. That is just, if you don't understand who you are and where you've been and the experiences that you've had, you cannot make any kind of plans to go forward. And people think that they do, but they are not helpful because they don't understand who we are and what our culture is and what kind of contributions we have made to the development of this country and for that matter, the world. So that's my first pet peeve. My other pet peeve is men who mistreat women. That is absolutely the most ignorant thing that you could possibly do. Because if you don't have sense enough to treat your woman well, then you don't need to have a woman.
Okay, that sums it up. Okay, let's have one last one then. I have a number of others, but we'll just try one more.
Okay.
This is going to be very difficult.
All right, I'm ready.
Because you can go on with this one for a long time. What do you think Tuskegee and Macon County will look like in 5 to 10 years from now?
That is a situational question. Because you see, if we're not doing something about Tuskegee and Macon County now, it will not look like what we are experiencing currently. What we've got to do is look at Booker T. Washington, see what his plan was, because his plan was different from anybody else's plan in the whole universe. Had we listened to Booker T. Washington, this town would be a big, huge place for Black folks and anybody else for that matter, because everybody was welcome. But I'm just going to talk about Black people right now. This would be a mecca for real for Black innovation. There's been so much that we have to be thankful for in this community. The people that matriculated here, the people who were born here, the people who came here, and I say that it's redundant in terms of what I just said, but I'm just trying to say that Tuskegee was not made up of native-born people. It was made up of people who wanted to come and do something. And so if you deal with medicine, John Andrew Hospital, it had no business being closed. They downsized the Tuskegee Veterans Hospital, which, by the way, is celebrating its 100th year this year, where the community, VA Hospital, Tuskegee University, the community came together and operated together as a team. Everybody had their role. A lot of people don't even know that the Black Medical Association was started right here in Tuskegee.
So was the United Negro College Fund, and so was,
yes,
I have heard and done my research that there were more PhDs per capita in this city than any other city. Los Angeles, Cleveland, Detroit, Miami,
absolutely,
New York.
Absolutely, absolutely. We were not rich in the traditional definition of being rich. You know, we didn't have millions of dollars, but we certainly had one of the richest brain powers in the whole world, right here in this very small town. And we have to protect that.
Well, Mayor Dunn, thank you for that great participation in that rapid round. I mean, you really knocked my socks off with those answers. So now, we're coming close to an end, but listen, let's talk about your mayoral beginnings and your accomplishments within that realm or place that you have visited. Mayor Dunn, when and or what sparked you to seek the office of mayor within the historic city of Tuskegee, Alabama?
I'm laughing because I never, ever, under any circumstances, thought about, dreamed about being involved with any political nothing. But I was cleaning my house one day, because I was cleaning before the cleaning lady came. You know how you have to do that, right? I should say organizing.
Yes, that's what you're good at.
And I got a phone call, and it was from a minister from this community. And she said, I understand you're going to be our next mayor. I said, that's a damn lie. I'm not leaving Washington, D.C. to come to Tuskegee to run for anything. I later found out, you know, I'm very spiritual. I mean, I laugh and joke about a lot of things, and you and I have had fun talking about crazy stuff and all, you know, when we went to school and all this, when I went to school and all that. But underneath all of that is a very spiritual piece that we don't often get a chance to talk about in public, right? I believe strongly that God directs your path. And that was an instance where God directed my path, because from that phone call, and I told the people, no, I'm not coming to Tuskegee to run for mayor. I woke up and I had water running down my face. I don't mean like tears like that. I'm talking about like a waterfall coming underneath my thing. And I heard a voice that said, go home. It said 3 times, and I kept saying, no, I'm not, no, no. And I finally got up, you know, I finally woke up, and I thought it had been settled. A week later, I went to the mailbox, and there was a check in my mailbox for me for $12,000. It did not come from my husband. It did not come from anybody that I knew. It had nothing. It was just a check for $12,000. I was like, okay, let me go home and see what this is about. And when I got home and I went to see Bobby Owens, you know, you remember Bobby?
Bob Tail.
Yeah, Bob Tail. And he said, he assumed that I was coming home to run for mayor, but I wasn't. I was coming home to see what this whole thing was about because of my spiritual belief. I realized that God was trying to tell me something, right? So in the process, I then saw all of the people that they told me to see inside of 3 days. I was like, oh. Well, then the next problem was, how was I going to tell my husband that I was going to do this thing called running for mayor? Well, it was 9 candidates that decided to run for mayor at that particular time. And I came in second, and I was stunned, but I did not think I was going to win. But I did, and I won at 63% of the vote.
Wow.
So
63%.
That exactly. So my issue at that particular time was, what am I going to do? And because of all the experiences that I shared with you earlier, I knew how to organize.
And since
I think that probably if I were to tell you the most important accomplishment that I had as mayor of the city of Tuskegee, it wasn't roads and all that kind of stuff, because that's a whole nother story about how and my experience around being mayor, and you all don't have time to hear that story. But I can tell you this, I made sure people got paid on time. I made sure that those who were willing to go to school got extra training and certification. Because see, I served as mayor of the city of Tuskegee, superintendent of the utilities, and executive director of Head Start. I saved Head Start from leaving the city of Tuskegee because it was on its way out. It was not meeting the demands and the criteria for the United States government as it related to Head Start. But I was able to buy the land that is now there. I think it's about 15 acres where we were supposed to build a building and all of that kind of stuff. And of course, you know, I served only one term. But in that one term, I was able to find out about where the money is, who was getting the money, and how was the money being spent. Reroute that money so that it went to the right places.
Well, you know, you are what they call a wonderful interview. And you say, why is that? The reason is that you've really answered 2 or 3 of the questions that I want to ask you. But I will ask that question, and this one of the 2 of those questions is this. If you could be remembered for one thing as mayor of Tuskegee, what would you like that to be?
That I started a revolution for doing the right thing. That was very, very important to me, because we had not had quite that level of competence. And I felt it was very important that I did not fire everybody, because I got a lot of pushback in terms of people saying, you know, some leaders in this community saying, well, what you need to do is you need to go through and you need to fire everybody. No, we're not going to fire everybody. And we're not going to fire everybody, because what are they going to do? I had a woman to come to my house, and she was crying, and she said, thank you so much for not firing my husband, because if he had been fired, our daughter would not have been able to go to college. That was far more important to me than anything else. How do you develop the people that you have? Because you're not going to get any more. Now, you know, if I fired everybody, what was going to do? It was going to be people coming from every place else. These people lived and worked and had their families in Tuskegee. So that's why I did not fire them, and I would do that all over again. Though I would know what to do a little differently around some things.
Well, that's a wonderful legacy to be remembered by. And lots of people, whether we speak of them individually or not, are thankful in that regard. Let me ask this last question about the mayoral duties and or times or influence that you had. You are a staple within history, within the Tuskegee city government, as the first female mayor to hold the position. What advice would you give, whether it's male and or female, to the young people who are trying to achieve and move upwardly mobile in all of their endeavors, whether it's in politics, the service, or parenthood, etc.? What would you tell them?
I'm a big believer in knowing who you are. And you've heard me say that on several different occasions around some of the questions that you've raised. Excuse me. If you understand and accept who you are, I mean, of course I'd love to be 5'7" and 5'9" and have a swivel figure and all of that, but I'm not. I'm 5'1" and a half. 5'1" and a half, a little on the plump side, right? That's not going to change. So I have to operate within the context of who I am. I'm a bossy person. I've been bossy all my life, okay? I didn't know that I was bossy, but, you know, I try to be diplomatic about it, but I am bossy. So I need to have a job where I can be a boss without any consequences.
Okay.
So that is the first thing that I would say. The second thing is know who you are dealing with. Get the history of what's going on around you and wherever you are, because the culture impacts people's behavior. Policies impact people's behavior. Find out all of those things before you run around here and try to make decisions about something that you don't know anything about. You see? So if you understand who you are and understand the environment and the culture that you're dealing with, you'll be successful.
Well, with all of that said, about being a little pushy, I think it was just being progressive. You have been, in this interview, an interviewer and an interviewee. So this is what you're going to be, the interview.
Okay.
Mayor Dunn, what's one question you wish I had asked you, and how would you answer it? I'll say it again. Mayor Dunn, Dr. Dunn, what is the one question you wish I had asked you, and how would you have answered it?
First ways, I'd like to compliment you on the questions that you have asked me, because they have been questions that allowed me to be much more in depth than some of the superficial questions that I often get. So thank you for that.
Welcome.
My one question would have been, what are you doing now
I got
at
it right here.
at TMCCF? And my answer would be two things. One, I am very much involved in developing a rural healthcare system. And the other thing I'm very much involved with is the renovation and revitalization of our historic Greenwood community.
So, we spoke earlier of, and I asked you, what advice would you give young people? Mm-hmm. Be upwardly mobile. Can you do this? Because you can do it. What would you say to someone your age to motivate them that they still got it going on?
Oh my God, that's a beautiful question. I do truly believe, in intergenerational processes. My favorite African proverb is, young people run swiftly down the road, but it's the old people that know the way. So when you put those things together, you have a very promising process for developing your community. You cannot decide that you're going to leave out old people, and you cannot decide to leave out young people. You better bring the young people in if you're old people, because see, young people have been the ones who've been teaching me about technology, how to use my computer and how to use my phone and all of that stuff, right? And I'm learning all about, telecommunications and telemedicine and telehealth and all of those things that help to resolve some of the challenges that we have in our community, right? Communication is a must, and you know that because you're involved in communications. How do you tell the stories? Because you see, if you make a decision and you don't know what the background is, you have wasted your time. Because generally speaking, it's either going to be harmful to the community or it's going to be inaccurate. So you better learn from the old people about what happened in the past, because past will decide what's going to happen in the future. So intergenerational is very key and very, very important. And the old people gotta embrace young people. Don't be jealous because they're 25 and you 80. You were 25 at one time, and maybe you didn't do what you were supposed to do at 25, but that's your fault. Teaching young people is critical, because that's how the past is dealt with.
Finish.
Right? How you have put the program together. If you don't do it right and put it in the historic context, it's not going to work as well. So we need to stop. I'm trying to find the right and proper word, because I don't want to cuss on the TV. Okay. What we got to do is stop eating our young. We have to embrace our young. We have to stand them up. We've got to push them forward, and we've got to teach them. The young people have to learn, just because we're old, you don't throw us in the garbage can. You got to embrace us like we have to embrace you. And that's what makes a healthy community.
So to those who are and have listened, and maybe this is going to be the second or third time that you hear this, share it with others to come and listen to this, what has been stated, said, heard, and felt here today, because it is pot of gold. It doesn't have to be a rainbow. It's a pot of gold right here. And I would like to thank you on behalf of Jesse Harris, director and cameraman of this most important film, the Tuskegee Mares Within Thou Pride of the Swift-Growing South, the first edition, or first series of 5, honoring and/or highlighting the one and the only Dr. Dunn, Mayor Lucenia Dunn, Mayor Lucenia Dunn Emeritus. And so, For all of the television networks that we are affiliated with, I'm Chigady Colbert saying thank you and bye-bye.